Hello, everybody. My name is Trevor Quickshot Henry, and you are watching the Esports Awards Origins podcast. This is the podcast where we speak to your favorite content creators, the best esports pros, the most professional esport professionals, and of course, everybody behind the scenes as well. Now, today, I get to speak to somebody who has become synonymous with one of the most difficult games in esports, Rocket League. Some call him the voice of Rocket League. I also need to ask him what on earth a public address announcer is. I am, of course, speaking about Sean Stackhouse, aka Stax. Good morning, I think, where you are in the world. How are you doing today, Stax?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
The pleasure is really mine. And I mentioned it just before we went live, but in case you're new to Origins and watching at home, this is the podcast where we want to talk about how Stax became Stax, where your love for gaming came from, how you got into esports, things like that. So let's start with the very beginning, because I already have that question about public address announcer. We'll get to that. What's your earliest memory of playing video games?
Oh, man. When I was a child, my parents bought me a NES, and I mean like a really young child. I was so awful at games. So they also had the foresight, not that they're very tech savvy, but they had the foresight to buy me a Game Genie as well. And of all the dumb things to remember, I forget a lot of important things, but I still remember SLXPLOVS was Infinite Lives in Super Mario 3. I won't confirm or deny whether or not I ever played through the game without using that particular code.
And I would never ask you to. I would never
exactly.
ask you to. Just before we go much further, I won't reveal it unless you choose to, but we are both born in the same year. We are both of the same, let's say, vintage, right? Can you explain to our younger viewers and maybe even Rocket League players what a Game Genie is?
Oh, my goodness. Yes. So, back in my day, we had the Game Genie was this thing that, first of all, the NES cartridge, if you don't know, just this big gray brick that you would put into the console. The Game Genie would go in, I believe, first, and you would have the NES cartridge attached to the Game Genie. And that allowed you to, use these codes. And there was a big book that came with it that had all the codes for all the various different games released at that point. And, you would be able to do stuff like Infinite Lives. You would have you would always have, I think, like the feather suit. You would always have, I don't think there was ever one to just always have Star. If there was, I can confirm I never used that. But I at least wanted some challenge.
It effectively is what the kids of today will know as a cheat code in single-player games.
Yes.
If you play multiplayer games, you could say it was hacking. But that's so.
I think it became the game Shark with the Sega Genesis.
It did. Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Don't ask why I know that.
Let's talk about this. So, if you're already from the NES generation, you and I have got a very similar parallel in terms of our introduction to gaming. Let's talk about the early years. So you go NES, Sega, the first Xbox, first PlayStation, PC. How did Sean and gaming and parents get along in those early years? And when did you learn about esports?
I learned, I guess it depends where you're talking about esports. I mean, Halo was probably my first introduction to it, but I never played anything competitively at all. Outside of like a local school LAN or something. And I say school LAN, the school sure as heck wasn't letting us, bring Xboxes into the gymnasium and play Halo during the actual school year. But we're pretty lucky that over the summer there wasn't a whole lot going on, and we, somebody knew the right people, and we could occasionally get into the gym and do like a LAN party over the summer while school was out. But I watched like some of the MLG stuff when my friends would mention it. But I would say, like the real first intro to esports proper would have been, watching more of like League of Legends or Dota when that stuff had really started to pick up in popularity. And that was even, I would say
listen,
probably even after college.
You've jumped a decade. So I'll put things into a little bit of perspective here. Halo, I think the first Halo came out around 2000. It was really early, right?
Yeah.
Really, really early. Dota, League of Legends was released in 2009. So I want to get to that later. Let's dial back to now. 2000, 2001. You're a teenager. You know about Halo. What did you study? What did your parents think of gaming? And kind of what was the trajectory that you were looking at as young Mr. Stackhouse?
The trajectory of gaming, really, I thought I was going to be like a writer for Nintendo Power or something. When I was in middle school, our school library had just this box of old Nintendo Power magazines, and they probably got some of the newer ones. I don't really know. I literally would just like go into the library and just sign one out, and yes, you would sign out magazines, which is the weirdest thing. But I'd go and I'd just like read through it. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And like I was big on the N64, not as much the PlayStation, but the N64 games, because like Mario 64 was great. GoldenEye and Perfect Dark were some of my favorite. It's still some of my favorite games of all time, and I really enjoy seeing how like GoldenEye in particular is still modded to this day and kind of modernized by the community. So. The N64 was definitely my jam. I thought I was going to be a writer for Nintendo Power. I thought maybe I'd be like a sports broadcaster, but that was still kind of very much in the back of my mind. But yeah, that 1997 to 2002 period, man, there were so many great bangers. Final Fantasy X on the PS2 kind of became my favorite game of all time, and I've probably played that through 11,000 times. I've bought it way too many times to count, and
I still have a crush on Riku, by the way. Titus and Yuna, their love story. To this day, I still have a crush on Riku. Like, great taste in video games. But now you mentioned, ESPN, you mentioned writing, you mentioned sportscasting. So what did you study? Because when I do a bit of research into Sean Stackhouse, I learn about a public address announcer. I see a lot of stuff about University of Maine. So tell me about that period of your life and maybe how did it push you towards the broadcasting or commentary side maybe?
So when I got into high school, our school had a local access TV station. So we'd be like on channel 6, I think it was, very, very local. It'd be where you'd put on like, if there was a community concert or, somebody wanted to take 30 minutes to advertise their, I don't even know, but
the small business, something. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like a very small, like, what is it? Paid programming. It was a lot of that. And, we would broadcast our local sports games. And I started at that TV station in study halls. I would just go up, and if they needed something voiced, I would do that. I would watch them as they shot segments for local shows when I could. The very first thing I ever did, they told me they wanted me to do a golf video. And I'm like, okay. And it was highlights from their match. We have a golf course in town. They played there. They shot the match. They brought it in to cut up and just needed me to voice it. I didn't know they wanted me to do a highlight reel. I thought they wanted me to do it like broadcast it like golf. So I'm really talking quiet like this, and then nobody told me, so they aired it, and I'm watching it in my grandparents' house, just going, "This is stupid." What was I doing?
Something? Can I tell you something? You accidentally commentated golf on television without realizing. Like, there are people who work their asses off their entire. I don't care if it's local and small. Like, congratulations. But what did that teach you? Is that something that like opened your eyes? So I really enjoy this type of work.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't enjoy it. I also learned very quickly to make sure you understand the assignment
Okay.
and make sure you understand just what does the producer or the director, what is their vision for this? And, not long after, our soccer season had fired up and I started broadcasting games there. And then I knew what the assignment was because we'd take our van down to the field, set up in the corner there, and we're basically doing it live to tape. And then it was like, okay, this is cool. I had some designs of potentially playing basketball. I played my 8th grade year, maybe playing my 9th grade year. I'm like, no. I just want to do broadcasting now.
So how old were you when this happened? And talk me through the next steps of like working towards university, and maybe more specifically, when do you inject video game into this broadcasting exploration?
Yeah, so this is around like I'm 13 to 15, going freshman, sophomore year of high school. And when we got to basketball season, I would I'd be on one side of the gym, kind of in between the bleachers. That's where we set up to do our play-by-play. I would go around to the other side of the gym to where the public address system is. I would introduce the starting lineups for the game, then walk back over and then broadcast the game. That was, I guess, my earliest intro to public address announcing, and then mixing that with play-by-play broadcasting. The video game aspect, esports, that never really came until much later, like well into my adult years. Like we had like a group of us that would play League of Legends, and there was occasionally the guy that was like, hey, why don't we spectate our friends playing, and we cast it, because there was a couple of my friends that wanted to do that and try to become shoutcasters. And it wasn't really on my radar at that point, but I was like, I literally went to college for sports broadcasting. It's adjacent, let's try it. And we sucked. we sucked at the game, and we sucked at commentating the game. And it was at that very, very early point, like in the early 2010s, that I think we understood League of Legends shoutcasting was not going to be in my future.
Fair enough. So when did Rocket League become into your future? When did the birth of Stax, the shoutcaster, somebody who I will go on to say has become synonymous with Rocket League, somebody whose voice you hear in highlight reels now, when did that happen?
That happened, I would say, almost by accident.
Just like golf.
Yeah. Yes. In the house that I'm currently sitting in, the house that I've been able to buy thanks to this wonderful career, I used to rent in the upstairs. Like the upstairs, there's an old lady that lived here, and she rented it out to me for I think I don't know, $500 a month. Very small space, but it was my own. And 2015-ish, I think it was 2015. I'm up there. I got my PS4. I'm, all right. Yeah, we're just gaming. There's really nothing going on in life. Like, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm a crossing guard. I work for the local rec department, doing some PA announcing, really just doing odd jobs to get by. And I think it's around May, and near the end of the month, I looked a few times at what the free game of the month was, and it was okay, yeah, whatever. Free game, I could get it. I lose nothing by downloading it. I saw Rocket League, and I thought, all right, this looks like it's going to be hard. I don't know that I was necessarily ready for hard, but it also looked very similar to sports, and unlike any sport that I've seen. Sure, it's like a hybrid of soccer and hockey, but there is no sport that is car hit ball into goal. So I'm okay, this is unique. Let's try it. Immediately fell in love with the game. You know how as a kid you're playing basketball in the driveway, and you're just 3, 2, 1, Jordan shoots and he scores. Like, I'm commentating my own games while I play. And I'm like, this is fun. Like, I haven't had this much fun playing a game in a very long time. And it's something that I played casually for several months. And and it wasn't Stax at the time. It was Sea Dogs fan 44. Just like I'm a big fan of the Portland Sea Dogs.
Okay. I was going to say, because I'm unfortunately perennially online. The Sea Dog that I know is a voice actor who has a YouTube channel. Letter C DAW. I apologize for bringing this down a few levels.
You're good,
but I love this. I want to say thank you as well. Like the level of honesty to discuss paycheck to paycheck how things were looking, and then congratulations on being able to buy the house. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
So how did you then decide to develop a style of casting, and like, what was your first gig? How did you then get into it?
So boy, it would have been the very next year, I think 2016. I think RLCS had just started their online show, not online shows, their studio shows, their regular season, and they were into their league play, and I had seen like a whole bunch of community tournament stuff, but hadn't really engaged in any of it. And I'm watching, I think like I'm watching some like Rocket League Central stuff, watching like Shift Pro League at the time. And there was a group called Mocket Esports that was running like weekly tournaments. So they had like a weekly 1v1, a 2v2, and a 3v3. And they had both North American and European tournaments. And you could just watch a lot of Rocket League all throughout. And I reached out to a couple of the people that I saw doing commentary. It was like, hey, I'm kind of interested in getting involved in this. Who else should I reach out to? How do I do this? And one of the people from Mocket said, well, we have this form. You're interested in being a shoutcaster, fill it out. If you've got like a demo reel or something, feel free to submit it. And so all I did was basically record myself as I watched one tournament doing commentary over it, and also recorded some bots gameplay and just did commentary over that. That's probably still somewhere unlisted on YouTube. If I ever feel like
you should review
dragging that out.
Can I tell you something? A tiny story about me very quickly is that I actually hired and did some of the training for the European League of Legends commentators. And one of the things I did when I was looking for talent was do exactly what you just described. Please upload a VOD of you doing commentary. And then what I would do is I picked specific games. So I could be like, okay, I want to hear a specific team fight. I want to hear how they describe this gank and this late game decision, right? So I focus on these small things. You really should do a VOD review, because I would love to know how your style evolved. Think back to that first game think to who Stax is in 2026, a decade later. Yeah. How did you find your style, and how did it evolve over 10 years?
Yeah, so Mocket let me have a go at it. I started casting with Azael, who, unfortunately is no longer with us. But he was just a very friendly, very easy to work with co-caster. He was kind of like the second in command, I think, or third in command with Mocket. And we did like a couple of the Saturday 3v3s. And immediately, it was like, hey, this Sea Dogs guy, like he's pretty good. And they actually offered me, I think it was like $200 a month, and sent me a green screen. It is not this one, but they sent me a green screen and offered me $200 a month. The catch was, and I didn't know this at the time, because I really still was not like ingrained into the Rocket League community. Like, you only cast for us. Like, this is exclusive. You are with us. Like, these other tournament organizers. There was like a lot of friction between, I wouldn't say between all of the tournament organizers in the scene, the community ones, but specifically between Mocket and all the others, where like they wanted, if you were with Mocket, you just did our stuff, and there was a lot of resentment from the rest of the community. It reached the point where I wanted to go do other community tournaments. Like I wanted to work with like the Shift guys. I wanted to do like Ghost Boosters and Mythical and all these guys. And eventually I did that. The money stopped because, well, you're no longer exclusive. That deal's off the table. I'm like, okay, fine. But all of those opportunities that then came from that, we eventually left Mocket and formed Nexus Gaming, and then I got to work with Rocket League Central and all these guys. It really opened up a lot of opportunities to hone that craft. But the one thing that I always wanted to bring into this is more of a sports broadcasting style to this game that is, sports adjacent. And I feel like that made me unique from a lot of the other people in the scene who, didn't have that sports broadcasting experience.
Yeah, and I think as well, if you come from a more gaming centric standpoint and don't either watch as much sports, aren't aware of the Boston Sea Dogs, I think you called them, if I got the right place.
Portland Sea Dogs, yeah.
Portland, not Boston. Yeah. That's completely different places. But I do think that's very important. So maybe dial in a little bit more on this. Let's dive deeper and nerd out a touch and how you then injected some of this sports broadcasting knowledge into the voice of your play-by-play and stage hosting.
Yeah, so when I got into Rocket League casting really seriously, I also I would watch the RLCS, and very, very early on in my time watching, one of my thoughts was, I want to do that. Like I definitely want to be like one of these guys, like Leaf, like Wavepunk, like Lawler, who are, actually casting this game in a studio. This is so cool. Or then when they had the first ever World Championship, being at the we were doing it at theaters at that point.
Yeah.
I want to do this, but nobody knows me, and there is no way that Sea Dogs Fan 44 is going to, broadcast professional Rocket League. So I, when people at, local sporting events see me, they're like, hey, Stack, okay, why don't I do Stax? Like if I just do STAX, that sounds like edgy and cool, and it's
You're
basically
showing
my
age. You're showing your age.
I know,
but it's
dude,
true.
Yeah. Hello, fellow children.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but I'm just like, Stax is like, it sounds cool, and I could have done, like Stax the word, but just adding the X there is like, okay, this is kind of cool. I couldn't get that Twitter handle or anything. Somebody else had beat me to it, but that's fine. And it was like, okay, now I feel Stax is easier to say than hey Sea Dogs fan or hey Sea Dog or whatever. So
yeah.
So I rebranded that. I think that was in like the first year, and then just started with Nexus. We were doing all these community tournaments, and I get to work with so many really cool people. That's where I met Dazarin, doing Rocket League Central stuff, and that unknowingly set off a partnership that's lasted to this day. Just one of my absolute favorite people to work with, and we were just like in this random Discord getting ready to do a Gfinity 2v2, I think, and it was like one of the first ones that I was going to produce and cast at the same time, and I'm like, hey, anybody want to do this 2v2? I know it's late notice. This Dazarin pipes up. He's like, yeah, I'll do it. And, I met Daz. We hit it off. Fantastic cast together. And, as much as it could be in our very early days of casting. And, man, that's a man who has taken taken no for an answer way, way, way too many times for any sane human, and still come back and made an incredible career for himself. And
That's amazing.
you know, I know I'm probably jumping subjects here, but
no, you're not. You're not.
I
Actually,
can't say enough cool things about Daz.
Can I tell you? I'm really not joking. The very next question I have is how important is chemistry with your co-caster, right? And you've naturally led me to this because I want to just summarize this really quickly, right? You discover Rocket League, you start falling in love with it, you want to inject some sports broadcasting. I'm hearing that there's a lot of community practice, a lot of grassroots tournaments, a lot of, I presume, either like university tier or school tier, content creator stuff, things like that. So you're doing a lot of grinding, you're doing a lot of practice. You find a casting partner that you start working with. So talk to me about that side of it, because once you start developing that relationship and that understanding with somebody, you also start finding more success. Because I'm guessing this is like 2016, 2017. I believe by 2018, you start working for RLCS. So how do you develop synergy with other people when you've already got your quote unquote one true love?
So, at the time, like, Daz wasn't like the guy that I'm always working with. In fact, there really wasn't one guy. I got to work a lot with a guy named Achieves. Mike was amazing to work with, still is. I love every chance I get to. They are unfortunately few and far between now, but I've always felt like I've been kind of a chameleon that, if somebody wants to do more of a play-by-play style, I can do more like a hybrid and work with them. But it is important, when you're doing stuff like RLCS, that, you do have incredible chemistry with the person you're working with. Because I feel like I drop off commentary in some awkward spots sometimes. And it's tough for a co-caster sometimes to kind of, okay, is he going to stop here? Is he going to pause and keep going? Daz knows. And, he knows if I'm going to drop off, he knows he can pick it up there. And especially in person, we have a lot of hand signals that we make with each other. There's one, I think from the World Championship in Germany, where somebody had a camera on us. It might have been Caleb, who's a fantastic photog in our community. And, somebody scored, I think it was either a game-winning or series-winning goal. The crowd goes absolutely nuts. I have some big call for it. I probably said something like Vatira or something. And then I just like put a hand out to Daz. And he's in like this pinstripe suit. We really look like we were like New York gangsters. But I just have this handout to him, like, just pause for a moment. And he was about to say something. He saw that and he just let it breathe. And then, just like give him a thumbs up, and then he takes over. And, it's just little things like that you're never going to see because, our part of the broadcast is pretty much all audio. But that's just chemistry that we've built up over time. If I were working with somebody for the very first time, I would almost never do that. I would never be like, hey, stop.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta build that up. Otherwise, you just trust them to kind of do their thing. But, Daz and I have been at this for, almost a decade now. And, we trust each other implicitly.
I can really relate to that. I can really relate. And I've been on the receiving end of a shut up as well. I've been asking, hey, give me a second. So I get that.
He saves me a lot too. Like that's awesome. Like he'll do this. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm yapping too much. I got to pass it off. And he's got something to say.
I get this one. Wrap it up. Just like that. Let's talk a little bit about the evolution of Rocket League, right? So you basically played the game from launch, roughly. You start taking it a bit more seriously over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. And then you actually start working on RLCS. So since being exposed to the game literally 10 years ago, how has the game changed and how has it grown up?
Man, I still remember the very early days. We didn't have like a very good spectator system, but a lot of the changes that have been made have been with an eye towards making the game more accessible, especially lately. And for the early days, I think that was more on the spectator side, where they finally gave us like an auto cam, they gave us a director cam, they gave us better spectator settings so we could you know get a better view of what we're talking about and also show the game better on streams. And now it's evolved to, we're making like serious gameplay changes, and they don't seem like they're huge. And I think kind of the beauty of Rocket League is, the game is still mostly the same from 2015 all the way up to 2016. It's still cars, ball, goal. It's the same standard field. They've tried with non-standard fields, and a lot of the pros just didn't like it. It created some balancing issues as well. And they're just like, hey, this is the field, and we'll work on the mechanics instead. So now, like, when you get demoed, you can at least see what side of the field you're going to respawn on, which doesn't make a huge difference, but it's another thing that you can communicate to your team.
At RLCS, it does make a difference. You know what I mean?
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
For the level that maybe, I don't know how good you are, but the level that I would play, won't make a difference at all. But at that level, it does. Let's talk about the competitive scene then, because if the game gets like locked down, it's got its formula. It's the football of video games, like you know the same rule, soccer, you might call it. So how's the competitive scene evolved over the last 10 years?
It's become far more global than when I started. Like when I started with the Rival series, that was like the second tier, and we didn't have that at the very beginning. We started with, there was just the RLCS for 3 seasons, and then I think it was in the 3rd season qualifier, there was a team, Iris, that had like Squishy Muffins, and I honestly couldn't tell you the other two. It might have been the team that eventually became Cloud9. So I think it was been like Squishy Torment Gimmick. And they got knocked out of the qualifier. So they did not qualify at all for the league play. And depends who you ask. My theory is that Memory and Zane and these Lemon Puppy, these guys on what became Set to Destroy, they basically, by knocking out Iris, brought about the Rival series, because there were a lot of cries for like, hey, these qualifiers are pretty brutal. It's just a double elim. Like, if you have a bad day, you're out, and there is no other recourse for these teams. Mostly the 9 to 16 teams that, on a good day would be good enough to make it into the top 8. So then they eventually add the Rival series, which is, for those teams that they don't finish in the top 8 of this qual, 9 to 16 go into a league play. And what I was really impressed by, the first season I wasn't part of it. They ran it out of Murdy's basement, basically, out in California. Murdy Scheist, one of the guys who's now working with Epic full time, he ran Pro Rivalry League, which was one of the community organizations. They ran the show out of their basement. The matches, of course, all the qualifiers and league play stuff is online. But they ran the show out of his basement. It was every like Thursday or Friday, and then it led into RLCS proper on the weekends. Then they move it. Yep.
So I was going to say, that's really cool. And the parallels also with like League of Legends, community casters doing small tournaments that then lead up into the bigger ones. There's parallels in other communities as well.
Yeah.
So please do continue the tale.
Yeah. So then the next season, they move us into the studio that RLCS is running in, which is awesome. And that was like the very first experience I got with like, oh, now we're in the big time. And so they would fly us out. We would fly out Thursday, do the, and I would, I'm flying from the East Coast out to Burbank, California. It was at like NGE Studios. And, God, what would it be? I'd get to LAX at like 6:00. Have to take an Uber to Burbank, which, at that hour meant, oh, this is going to be, this is like an hour and a half Uber ride. And then, get there, walk across the street to Panda Express because Subi turned me onto that. Subi, another one of the guys who was on the Rival Series, just a fantastic friend. Then go to sleep, wake up. Friday morning, we do the European Rival Series show, have a lunch break, do the North American Rival Series show. Cool. We're doing like 4 matches a day. There are 4 matches on each show. Then, eventually they also brought in like an improv teacher to work with us and the RLCS guys because they would arrive. Friday was their arrival day. Yeah. So we finish our show. They're coming in. We all do this. We go to get dinner, then come back and join their improv stuff in progress. Then we fly out Saturday morning right before they start their show. And I'm like, and I'm walking through the airport on the other side, just watching RLCS on my way to the gate to go back up to Maine. And that was that for, 3 out of the 5 weeks. And then it eventually became, we're just going to have all of you do every week. And so that was, all 5 weeks of it, fly out Thursday, show Friday, fly home Saturday. And, that was that until COVID happened and the world shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say very quickly, congratulations on the journey, because there's a lot of grinding there that goes somewhat unsung. There's a lot of grinding. I know we don't have time for all of them, unfortunately. Yeah. But I will ask very quickly before I dive into some of the differences between the working environments you've been in. By this point, where now you're going to the studio, you're doing improv classes to improve your craft, is now Rocket League and broadcasting paying the bills? And
yes,
have you found the dream? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It kind of started with, I went to the World Championship in London as a fan, and, I connected with Leaf at that point. He's from Toronto. From Ontario. He's not from Toronto proper.
He would, yeah.
Kitchener. Yeah. But he, he was very in tune with all the like Canadian Rocket League stuff. And I'm in Maine. I'm a neighbor. And so he asked me if I wanted to do a couple events there. I did one in Toronto, and I linked up with Lawler, who was represented by. He told me like, hey, I know this guy's character select agency. They they represent me and a lot of us on the RLCS. Get you introduced, and boom, I now have a talent agent, and it just felt so bizarre to me. But they did a lot for me, and they still do a lot for me to help me get gigs and also handle like the negotiations and stuff to a point where now, yes, very quickly Rocket League started paying the bills, and I was very, very, very thankful for that. And it didn't stop paying the bills when the world shut down because, fortunately, I think really the biggest break happened when, we were doing like B stream stuff. All of us that were on Rival Series, we were doing B stream for RLCS. They had their RLCS X championship where, it's still all online, but they have this show in June where, they're going to have like all the people that won the online majors. They're going to, put them in a bracket, and, we'll have these matches to determine who the RLCSX champion is in each region. There was another thing, the Intel World Open, which was supposed to be Street Fighter and Rocket League as part of the Olympics, the 2020 Olympics. That got pushed back because the world died. And so they ran an online version of it out of the ESL studios in Poland. And all these mainstream, like top stream RLCS guys didn't want to go out and do the Poland show because they had RLCSX championships. So they started asking a bunch of us B streamers, and one of the admins on the show said, hey, it's really sorry to hear that you can't, that you had like a conflict with this. And I'm like, whoa, no, nobody asked me this. Well, where did you get that info? No, I want to do this. And he reached out to, the people staffing the show, and they immediately contacted CSA. They're like, hey, no, this guy can do this, so we want him. And I ended up going out to Poland for a month for IWO, and that's where Corey Lanier got on a Zoom call with me and said, "Hey, Stax, you can't tell anybody this, but you're coming up to the RLCS mainstream next year," which I then told everybody at the show because, you know.
Oh, I love that. The way you tell that story with the timing is phenomenal. Again, I will say congratulations, because getting that opportunity and then taking it and running with it is huge. What is the differences then you found from all of these grassroots events to your first? Dare I say, was Poland the first international, like main big tournament, and then RLCS?
Yeah.
How does the energy or the way that you approach work have to change?
I would say there's a lot more confidence in the show when you have a dedicated producer, and this was true even with the Rival series and the B streams, but maybe not to the same extent. But you've got like a whole dedicated team that's like they've all got their jobs, and now your job is just all right, cast the game or host the segment, whatever you end up doing. And the camaraderie as well that you build, especially being in Poland for a month, we got to meet the Street Fighter guys and have a great time with them and everybody working on the show. It just feels so much different. And you really feel like, oh, we're on a big time production now. And the difference between that and doing like your grassroots tournament is, a lot of times you're bringing in ideas, and you should be bringing in ideas even on the bigger shows, but like you're bringing in a lot more of them. Yeah. I think sometimes people will hire, and this happens in the announcing aspect as well in traditional sports around here. They're looking for a public address announcer. They're also looking for marketing ideas. They're looking for you to bring in some creative ideas as well. So, with these bigger shows, I think there was just a lot more confidence that, okay, I can do my job. And if I've got something great, they'll listen. If not, I know that they've got this covered, and, all right, I can focus on the stats and the storylines, and all right, let's go.
Well, listen, let's turn our attention a little bit now to what comes next, right? Because you talked about joining the RLCS. It's so clear how your approach to broadcast work is kind of all-encompassing. The first thing you said was that you might forget stuff, you got a bad memory. I don't think you've forgotten a single human being you've ever met, based on how this conversation has played out.
I try not to.
Conversation, it's very impressive. But let's talk about what are the next steps now? Because now you've been with RLCS for a long time. You've been able to travel to multiple events all around. I know you did Gamers 8, for example. I know I've seen RLCS, like you mentioned Poland. So what comes next for Stax?
Man, I don't know. I would love to keep elevating Rocket League to a point where, and I think we're very close, especially if we keep going to Paris. I've told anybody that will listen that. Well, let me rewind for a moment. I was fortunate enough to do an event called KCX, Armine Corp versus the World, at La Défense Arena, where we're going to be for the Paris Major in May. I did this a couple of years ago. They filled, they must have sold 30,000 seats in La Défense Arena for a bunch of show matches for Karmine Corp. And K Corp, K Corp and Vitality and Gentlemates, their fan bases are just absolutely radical. They're amazing fans, very passionate, but they filled this arena to watch the Karmine, the Rocket League team that was disbanding, play G2, to watch Kurama, who was signed to them, play a few other pros in Smash Bros. Show matches. Like, these matches really meant nothing tangible other than, hey, we're K Corp, we're taking on the world. And so I've been telling people, we've sold out Lyon, we're going to sell out La Défense here, however many seats we're selling for the Paris Major. I've been saying, listen, you could go get just about any stadium in the entire country. I don't care if it's 50, 60, 70,000 seats. You can come very close to selling it out, or you can certainly make it profitable to go to this
in
event.
France, for sure. There's no doubt in my mind.
Just because the Carmine and Vitality fans alone, if you let them, will buy 40,000 seats.
Listen, on this topic, okay, this is not related to the actual interview because it's mostly about you. Why on earth are the French like the best at Rocket League? How does that happen?
You could call it luck, I guess. I mean, KDOP was, kind of, yeah. Well, so Fairy Peak and KDOP were like two of the big early French pros, and they won world championships between them and were very, very competitive. But they were also great ambassadors for the esport. And when I very briefly wrote for RLCS, like I was doing interviews after like regionals and such. I talked to some of they were Team BDS at the time. Like Monkey Moon, Extra, those guys, they said that people like KDOP were a huge inspiration for them. And they felt like, as KDOP was in the twilight of his career, like they had an obligation to kind of carry that torch now for French players. And, and there are so many French players now that look at guys like Extra, Seiko, Monkey Moon, now Zen, Alpha, those guys as their inspirations. And it's just, the best players in the world were French, and with the branding of something like Vitality, they had so much reach, and there are more Rocket League players in France that wanted to be just like them, and they're doing it because I swear there are some that are just genetically altered to be better than everybody else.
That's what I wanted to hear. That's the secret sauce that I didn't know about.
I joke with my athletic director because I coach the high school esports program here, and we have like Rocket League, we have Smash, we have different teams. I'm just like, Jason, I'm gonna go over to France for this event. Don't be surprised if I come back with a Rocket League team. He's like, no, don't commit MPA violations. I'm like, but I want it.
It's worth it. I say you should do it. You should. What's the worst that can happen? Stax, we are nearly running towards the end of our time here in our conversation. And just before I give you an opportunity to tell us what projects you're working on and how we can follow you, one of the last things that I always do, because my nickname is Quickshot, I like to do some quick fire questions, meaning I'm going to hit some questions your way. Try to give me the quickest answer you can. If you feel strongly that you want to give me context, you're more than welcome to. Some of the questions need some context, but try to give me the answers. So we'll start with an easy one that I think I know the answer to already. Stax, who is your favorite casting partner?
Dazarin.
What was your favorite Rocket League LAN?
The first LAN coming out of COVID. It was Winter Major Los Angeles 2022.
Give me one of your most iconic lines.
Oh. Well, outside of stealing "This is Rocket League" from Shogun, one of my favorite ones, somebody absolutely beamed a goal, and I said, that's a golden opportunity on a silver platter with a bronze finish. And that really popped the community.
That is awesome. What is the strangest odd job you did before shoutcasting?
Oh, I was a crossing guard for our local school district.
I know we've got that one a little earlier, but I like to have that. And now a hard one. Pick one word that describes your casting style.
Sports.
I like that. Just before we end the quick fire questions, if we wanted to do an origins of somebody that you think deserves this story to be told, who would you nominate?
Dazarin Williams.
Dazarin, I'm going to write this down. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's, again, just a phenomenal talent who has worked incredibly hard. And I think alongside T-Bates and Roldiz, when they formed First Touch, they literally changed the game for how we consume Rocket League esports content. And
that's a hell of an introduction.
Yeah. They're just, I mean, all three of those guys are fantastic, but especially Daz. I don't know that there are too many people that have worked harder to get where they're at in the entire world of esports.
That's an amazing thing to say. One very last personal question. I got to spend quite a lot of time with Gibbs. He came to do Esports World Cup. And I'm going to be honest, Stax, there's not too many people in our industry that are kind of our age, but Gibbs has got the soul of a grandfather. I just want to know if you agree, because he's even older than we are. Is that right?
Yeah, he is wise even beyond his years. He's definitely wise beyond the years of the average age of our talent team.
You're being too polite. You're being too polite. Gibbs, I'm calling you granddad. That's from Trevor. Okay?
Yeah, he is kind of the dad of our team, though, and
I'm not surprised.
He does a phenomenal job taking care of us.
Let's do one last thing, Stax. For people who have just learned either about a little bit more about Rocket League, a little bit more about yourself, where can they find you? How do they follow you? And what are you doing next?
Yeah, I'm at StaxRL on Twitter or X and Instagram. I don't use the Instagram as much, but there's still time to teach an old dog new tricks. Otherwise, I'm not super active on socials. You're more likely to catch me if you ever come to the University of Maine to come to like a hockey game. I'm the stadium PA announcer there. And occasionally you'll catch me on like local sports broadcasts up here in Maine. But between announcing at UMaine and coaching the high school team, Twitter is pretty much the only place I have time to be active at all.
I tell you what, it's an inspiring story to go from Channel 6, your local television commentating golf, to being a crossing guard and working on construction sites, to playing a free game on a console, just trying to make ends meet, to now owning your own home and being one of the voices of one of the hardest esports in the world. Congratulations. It was a real pleasure to speak to you, Stax.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really had a great time here.
I'm really glad to hear that. For anybody that is watching, make sure you follow StaxRL on Twitter/X. I'm just going to call it Twitter forever. My name's Quickshot. We have had another amazing Origins episode. And if you are watching on YouTube, there's going to be a whole bunch more videos with a whole bunch more guests somewhere on this page. Check the playlist, watch the next episode. Until next time, I've been your host for Origins.